I am in charge of evaluating the consequence of ID theft in this project. And the idea is to set the scene and to have an idea of the different issues and the different problems. But I propose a few definitions, because that's a difficult topic. We have the difference between the theft and the fraud. I will explain. What is important is to have a taxonomy of the different ID documents, a taxonomy of the different theft, consequence, the cyber world, because we need to consider both the physical and the cyber world, victim, country. There are a lot of studies and publications about this topic, but the idea is to give some guidance, at the end of the day. That's not only to make a synthesis, but to have an idea, and then to see how we can address this issue. The theft or the fraud, that's a very, very young concept, because the idea to have a photograph and to have a document is quite new. If you look at the history, beginning of the 20th century in the US, the US wanted the citizens to have a passport, when they came back to their country, and the same for other citizens, to make sure that we have a person and you knew the person, we could make the correspondence between the person and this document. During the last war, it was an issue to identify certain intelligence officer with the wrong document, and we started to have agencies looking at fake document or fraud document, for hiding illegitimate objective. And it was the same during the Soviet period, intelligence officer in different countries, having fake identities. Today it's something which is quite, that's a huge market, to have to take a photograph, and we have a lot of specialists about passport in this audience, and I'm sure that you know that, the idea to use a passport, to have photograph, and try to fake a passport, that's a huge market. And now we have the physical world on one side, and we have the cyber world, which shows that it's a very important issue. I like this slide, which was shown at the Frontex conference 3 months ago. That's quite interesting in 3 years. You see the difference. The documents are more and more secure. We have experts in documents like my friend from Gemato and Morpho. Documents are the more and more secure. It shows that's the identity, that's the breeder document, that's the beginning of the process, which is the weak point. The documents are more secure, the process are more secure, which means that's the beginning of the chain, which is the weakest point. You are familiar with this kind of picture. If you go to Bangkok, if you go to Singapore, you can see this kind of shops, people selling documents. You want a driving license, or you want a passport, you want a student card, you just need to pay a few dollars, and you can get any certificate, any travel document you want. That's not very expensive, but that's something which happens, and you can find it in certain countries. Just to give you a few figures, on both sides, individual or private, we all live in our garbage, in the mailbox, documents with information, That's something which is typical for both individual and corporate. We have a lot of information, and this information allows to build an ID, and there are a lot of figures showing that issue. As an example, identity theft is one of the main complaints for the consumer today. That's 14% of the complaints, above the debt, the bank, or the other issues. Identity is becoming one of the main issues in terms of illegal activity. The source is given at the back of the slide. Definition. That's quite important, because sometimes we confuse the fraud and the theft, and that's very important to know exactly what we talk about. Identity theft, you cannot steal the identity from somebody, because if somebody leaves, he has steal his identity. We have the different concept of misappropriation, impersonation, The idea is that you take the identity. The person can be alive, it can be deceased, it can be conscious of that. You can help somebody by giving your ID. During the last war, you know, the idea was to help certain people to leave their countries, and the victim can accept this situation. The fraud is different, you know, the fraud is based on the theft, you know, but the fraud, the idea with the fraud is to build something, you know, an illegal activity based on the theft, and in terms of law, that's the main issue is once you have taken the ID of somebody, you will do certain illegal activity. The idea is to steal something and to obtain goods or services, which is not the case for the first concept. We have a lot of specialists in ID document. You are familiar with this concept. A passport or a travel document can be fogged, it can be stolen bank. That's something that happens in certain countries. Fraudulently obtained genuine, counterfeit, or a fantasy document, like you can find in Bangkok in certain countries, you know, a fake document. All these documents, you know, either that's a fake ID, either that's an ID which belongs to somebody. Just to give you a certain idea, the idea is to have a sort of taxonomy of the different case. You have the physical world on one side, the cyber world. In the physical world, you have plenty of ways to show your ID, you know, or to be the victim of a fraud, you know. A retail transaction, you can have your wallet stolen, your documents stolen, your mail, a mail in a mailbox. The people, they leave their mail in their mailbox during their vacation. And you have plenty of documents, you know, coming from banks, from different agencies, and that's something that gives a lot of information to build an ID. Dumpster diving, as I say, that's important, you know, people leaving their document in their garbage. A person deceased, shoulder surfing, you understand what it is, you know, something you look at somebody, you know, what he's doing, maybe write something on his computer, or he's looking at certain document. And employees, insider trade in a company, that's something that happens. Call center getting certain information from consumers, you know, if you want to give your Visa, your credit card number, imposters, end of relationship with the consumers, you have plenty of different cases. But if you look at the cyber world, you know, what we call the social engineering. Social engineering, that means building a sort of technical service but we will give some example like the phishing, there are different cases. Hacking a computer system, phishing campaigns, database attack, hijacking an account, social network, that's something that is growing in terms of importance, you know. A stolen computer, IT equipment, old equipment. You leave your equipment, you know, your drives, or your memories, your keys, something that happens. The readers contact us, you know. You see there are plenty of possibility to take your ID both in the cyber world and the physical world. The online world is something that is growing in terms of fraud. You know, you don't have face-to-face, that's by definition, that's the idea of the cyber world, you know. We have different steps, the user, the equipment, the ISP, the service provider, you know. You see each step can be a weak link in the process to get something, a service, or to get